Deuteronomy 31:8. Do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord will personally go ahead of you. He will be with you. He will neither fail you nor abandon you. David spoke to the Lord the words of this song on the day when the Lord delivered him from the hand of all his enemies and from the hand of Saul. He said, "The Lord is my rock, my fortress and my deliverer, my God, my rock in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold and my refuge, my Saviour, you save me from violence. I call upon the Lord, who is worthy to be praised, and I am saved from my enemies." Oh no, hold on. Revelation 1:8. I am the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, says the Lord God. I am the one who is, who always was, and who is still to come, the Almighty One.
Good evening, everyone. How are we all? Good. So we're going to do something a little bit different. If you were here last year when I gave a preach, we're going to do an interactive again. So you're going to need to grab out your phones and go to this website. The first 50 people are going to be able to respond because I am not subscribed. I am using the free version. Now, Shane at the back, if you can change over, because I've got another slide that has that. So that's going to go away for a sec. It'll come back, don't worry. It's menti, menti.com. And there'll be a code, kind of like a Kahoot, but more of an interactive. You get to fill in and have your say. We're just waiting. Here we go. Oh, wait for it. There it is. You got this, Shane. And then click on the... You got it? Yep. So before we get started, while we're waiting, my name's Josie. My pronouns are she, they. I am the operations manager here at MCC. And Denise has been ill all week. So we had a little chat on Friday. Yes. I'm going to go to a slide. Here we go. It should... There we go. 13575766 is the code. So when Denise asked me, she's like, "Oh, can I call?" I'm like, "Oh, what can I do to, ease the burden of being sick and being the pastor?" She's like, "You want to do the sermon? Lol." And I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "Really? Are you serious?" I'm like, "Yeah, why not?" So when thinking about what to say for this sermon, the first topic that came to mind in the series of being human was change. That's realistically what has summed up the last few years. Actually, most of my life has been change. Change of relationships, change of community, change of job, change of health, change of finances. The list could go out the door. Now, normally I would say I don't mind change. In fact, I think it's quite fun. But my brain would be calling me a liar. My brain does not like uncertainty. And that's what change brings. Change brings uncertainty, which is really exciting, but also incredibly terrifying. It can bring growth, it can bring loss, it can bring hardship, or potentially even fortune. Living in the tension of lots of change when your brain and body prefer stability, sameness and predictability is difficult. Or it can be difficult. However, it has been made easier for me through my relationships with people and ultimately my relationship with God. Now, tonight, I'm going to, in very classic teacher fashion, outline what today's lesson will be. So we're going to look at three things. The first is what is change? Love a good definition. 2, how do people deal with it? And 3, the anchor in the calm, storm, and the journey. So let us begin. Here we go. What is change? Part 1. So what does change mean to you? So you should be able to now, on your little devices, respond. You can respond with a phrase or a word. You can just say, nope, don't want to do it. You can, it should come up. Raise your hand if you've responded. Yep, Kevin's responded. New opportunities, there we go. Moving from the norm, growth, scary, good. Keep going. Transformation, restart, new beginning. Love a good word cloud. More transformation, uncertainty, normal, difficult, new opportunities, perceived loss. Oh, I like that one. This is great. Love good interactive. And it keeps going. So we're at 41 responses. Yeah, awesome. I'm going to go to the next slide. So there's a little word cloud. I went to Google and it came up with words that were similar to change. I just went define change. And if you can see your words that you've put up in there, good job, you and Google are on the same page. However, the biblical, obviously we're preaching, we've got some definitions from the internet. So make someone or something different, alter or modify, replace something with something else, especially something that's of the same kind that's newer or better, or substitute. Simply it might be to put different clothes on as a verb. As a noun, there's kind of three things as a noun. So an act or process through which something becomes different. So the substitution of one thing for another. We need a change of government, a change of socks. So clothes, occasionally it can also mean coins instead of banknotes, loose change, etc. Which is interesting because the Latin actually means things around barter or exchange, so similar words there. My personal favourite was informal, noun, the menopause, known as the change. That was a great definition I came across. Biblically, if we're looking at the Hebrew, there are tons there. I don't know if you can read that. There's a lot. My personal favourites are turn over every direction and to change one's mind. But a lot of them, some of them are about intrigue or mystery or a masquerade. But a lot is about exchange, swapping or transforming. A lot of transformation words, a lot of redo, redesign words. The Greek is a little simpler. Change one's mind, removal, taking up, translation, transfigured, bring back, take away, turning, removed. So when it comes to being human and change, like change is a very broad, as we can see, topic, I tend to think a little bit more of life's changes. And I would like to put them into two categories: extrinsic or external, and intrinsic or internal. So before we get, hold on. I've gone too far. We'll come back to this here. So there's the Greek. So externally or extrinsically, sometimes there are things that happen to us, like birth. Like that happened to us. Or even more dreaded than birth, puberty. Balding, menopause, illness. Sometimes there are things that happen around us that we might have some, depending on your work and interests, influence over. But perhaps not a lot, like the government, law, culture, institutions, trends, or fashion. As you can see, I don't have a lot of influence over the fashion. Our favourite sports ball team, winning or losing. So those are things that, that change around us. Sometimes there are things that we have limited or no control over. My favourite is the weather. No matter how hard I try, I cannot change the weather. And I can't change interest rates. Any person here who has a loan of any description would love to change the interest rates, but somehow they magically change themselves. And we cannot, of course, change Shane's shoe selection of the evening. He's not here, so that's fine, but that is for Shane to do. Oddly, the first, or the extrinsic changes seem a little bit more negative. They happen to us. This is, woe is me. Can be the oft-heard phrase. I think we like to complain about extrinsic changes sometimes. Sometimes we celebrate, like the new park that's opened, free Wi-Fi, better accessibility in design, which needs to be more of. The fact that we can go to Pride safely and be our wonderful rainbow selves. But let's be honest, has anyone here never had a whinge about the government or their boss or the church? but more on negative and positive bias in a bit. The second category was intrinsic or internal. So sometimes change can happen from within, changing your opinion or mind, attitude, actions, behaviour, belief system, habits, routine. Passively, this is usually in response to external stimulus. Someone asking you to do something differently. Josie, can you please put your 1000th pair of shoes away in the cupboard on the shoe rack? And I will try and change my behaviour. Or watching a new show because someone else talked about it. Or sleeping in later because it's winter. Or getting up earlier because it's summer. There's an external kind of force and we passively respond. Active internal change, in my opinion, is a lot harder to do, as it's on the other side of convenience and requires effort or motivation that many or some of us, I know I do, find in short supply. Examples: getting up earlier so you can fit in exercise at the pool because you know it's better for your back and you're over 30 and that's what you need to do. Making a healthy lunch instead of buying takeout. Examining a belief system or bias that might be geared negatively or towards judgment. Or staying open. Those types of things require a lot of introspection. However, change, whether internal or external, passive or active, is inevitable. It's partially physics, see Newton's second law of thermodynamics, re the increase of disorder. It's partially because even if you don't change, other things around you will. Theologically, it's what we're called to do: spread the good news, make disciples, heal the sick, raise the dead. Pretty sure all of those involve change, and to transform by the renewing of our minds to become more Christ-like, but that's a different sermon. So we're going to then, I'm going to examine how we feel about change. So this is a nice little spider graph here. From the very top, so 12 o'clock going around clockwise, change is good. I enjoy it when things change. Then change is bad for me. It means disruption and makes things hard. Now you can, I think, select a little scale of how much each one of these are you. At the bottom, so 6 o'clock, depends on the change. Getting a raise, awesome. Getting laid off, not so much. There we go. So got a nice little, I like how it just moves when people add to it. It's so cool. For change is necessary, which is kind of that very logical but kind of resigned way of looking at things. And the last one, which is sitting at, I think, about 10 o'clock on that graph, is change. When is it not happening? Cool. Can anyone read how many people have responded to that? Because I can't. I'm getting old. When is it not happening? Change is happening all the time. Is that one at like 10 o'clock? 26, okay. 5 means you agree, so strongly agree. 0 means I disagree. Change is never happening. 5 is change is happening all the time. Yes? If we've got any teachers or other presenters in the room, this is called menti.com. You can use it for free, up to 50 participants. It's great. Cool. We've got a few likes happening there. So as we can see, a lot of us kind of feel in a bit of the grey zone, depends on the change. Some of us feel very strongly about change being very disruptive. Also, though, that change is necessary. So we're kind of resigned to that. And so I would then sum up this section, part 1, of change is going to happen, whether we like it or not. So it's inevitable. So part 2, how do people deal with change? Some people don't, which is interesting. But I'm going to quote somebody else who's far more intelligent than I am. And I thought this was a really interesting quote by King Whitney Jr. Change has a considerable psychological impact on the human mind. To the fearful, it is threatening because it means that things may get worse. To the hopeful, it is encouraging because things may get better. To the confident, it is inspiring because the challenge exists to make things better. I know for many of us, well, I know for myself at least, I have definitely been in the fearful camp. And I've also been in the hopeful camp. Maybe not the confident camp, maybe a little bit, don't know. So how do you deal with, we're going to talk a bit about external versus internal. So external change, when things happen to you or around you, how do you deal with it? You can say, well, I'm awesome, Superman. You can say, I don't really deal with it well, or I need support, or I find it exhilarating. You can just list a word. It might be help. It might be yay. It might be a little bit about cycles. So we've got a few up there, which I can't read, unfortunately, from this distance. Hold on. So some people embrace it, understand why, depends on the change. Does someone say there's chocolate there? That's a great one. Yes, agreed. I'd be ticking that one. Yes, I also deal with change with chocolate and or ice cream. Sugar in general, yeah, awesome. Does anyone see a response up there that they're like, oh yeah, actually that's a really good response? For those who can read the screen. Pardon? Bitch about it and accept, yeah. Have a whinge and then move on, yeah. It's not a bad way to deal with external change. So then we think of internal change. So change that has to come from within. How do you go about in changing your mind? So there's 3 columns there. So you pick the statement that's most like you. The first one is, I like to stay the same. I will only change when it's necessary. The middle, the pink, is I like variety and stability in equal measure. Some change is good. Having to change too much is awful and stressful. And the third one is I enjoy change and actively seek it out. And I think a little bit predictably, perhaps, we're seeing a lot of the pink. Yeah. Change is one of those things that's, because it's so diverse and so, what's the word, broad, it's very hard to pin into black and white. And it's probably one of the reasons why human beings don't like it, but also crave it at the same time. We want spontaneity, but we want structure. And I think very strongly of 2 years ago this week, because I looked up this quote, I'd written it down in my journal, and it had the date 9th of October, 2022. Denise gave a sermon about change, and she quoted a man by the name of Brian McLaren, who has written a number of theological works. And here is this quote, and I've thought about this often, and it sticks with me. I used to think things were real and change was something that happened to them over time. So, for example, having a relationship with someone is real and change happens to that relationship. Now I think change is real and things are events that happen over time. So something joyful, something, I don't know, there's a lot of different examples. Who remembers that sermon by Denise? Just Shane and me? Oh, yeah, Nick, yeah, great. Love the hands. Did anyone else remember that quote? No, just my earworm. It stuck with me through a period of almost consistent change in the last 2 years. So for those who know me, I've come to MCC probably March 2022, and consistent change is the oxymoron that will describe my life in the last 2 years. I've changed housemates, I've had my heart broken, I've had health ups and downs with specialists and different medications, I've had my heart repaired, thanks Alice. I saw my sister married, I quit my teaching job after 9 years. I started working for my church, and I have 2 other casual jobs, and I've welcomed a new nephew who is very healthy and well to our family. I'm still going through things like property settlement, financial change, and more exploration of my own neurodiversity. And I'm also in the process of changing my name back to Neeskens instead of Broughton, which is really frustrating, actually. There's so much paperwork. And that's the short version of the changes in the last 2 years for me. I think, though, there are 2 really big factors that have helped me with change and continue to help me with change. The first is knowing what my locus of control is. Asking myself, what can I control and what can't I control? So, story time. I remember my first year of teaching. It was 9 years ago, 2015. 3 of about 5 key support people in my life moved state. They'd either moved country or they'd moved state. Away from Brisbane in a time where I was undergoing a lot of change and a lot of stress. I felt a bit isolated and like no one was actively being there for me. Upon catching up with a friend of the family, I did what most of us do. As Justin said, I had a bit of a whinge and I hoped to move on. I complained and I said, first year teaching was super hard. There were difficult people at work. There was not a lot of teachers my own age. I was the youngest, I think, by about 15 years at that particular school. And my go-to people, other than my partner at the time, had left, and had left in a way that we couldn't maintain that level of support that I think I felt I needed. So I felt alone and I felt a bit sad. This family friend's response surprised me, very much like a wet fish slapping me in the face. He said, "Josie, whose responsibility is it to make friends with you?" And I'm like, I remember sitting there going, I kind of hated that statement. I was tired, I was weary, I was stressed. He had very little pity for my situation, but he offered a very real point. It was within my locus of control to be able to seek out relationships with people and to find the support I needed, even though I was tired and stressed and weary. And to be honest, I stewed on this kind of a little bit grumpily, like, oh, how dare Ben say that? But for about 3 months. And then I started a book club. I like books, I like tea, and I knew a lot of people who also like books and tea. So I took a risk. I invited 25 people on Facebook that I knew that liked books and tea that were within reasonable distance to join a book club called the Books and Tea Brigade. And our first meeting had 4 people, including myself. But it was something. That book club eventually grew for over about a period of 5 years. And it waned, as most things are wont to do, and it's no longer running, but I still have friends from it that I catch up on the regular. And I'm incredibly grateful for that family friend offering me that not very empathetic, but very useful piece of advice. Recognising what I could control and taking action, even small action, was a huge step in dealing with change for me. Even just little things, making my bed. Logically, it's kind of pointless. You're going to get back into it anyway, so why would you? But if I did it, at least that was one thing I could control. And it felt good to control something, even if it was small and in a positive way that benefited me. So, next question for the class. Oh, hold on. Maybe my slides are out of order. Nope. Turn to the person next to you if you have one. I think I've accidentally deleted a slide. It's what's something little that you know helps you. Little that you can do amidst the bigness of change. You can call it out if you want, if you're brave. Anyone? No? Make things easy. Yeah, Nick.
I'm going to give the other teacher a response. I've been doing a lot of work on circle of control.
Yes. The circle of control. Yeah, that's a lot about what this is about. Knowing what you can control and can't. One of my favourite prayers, the Serenity Prayer. Lord, grant me the serenity I may accept the things I cannot change. The courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And the patience not to high-five people in the face of the chair. So, that one I have added on for my own benefit, and hopefully yours as well. The second big factor, other than locus of control, is relying on what doesn't change. So what was always there and is always stable, and that's God and God's love for me. And although possibly less stable than the ultimate timelessness of God's love, the love and support of those around me. So this is part 3, the anchor in the calm, in the storm, and on the journey. So first question to ponder. I love questions. If you've met me, you'll know I love questions. Does God change, or does my perception of God change? So we then come to Revelation that Justin read at the end of that Bible, those Bible readings. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, says the Lord God. I am the one who is, who always was, and who is still to come, the Almighty One. So my perception of God has gone from, when I was young, white-bearded man in the sky who says to treat people nicely, to when I was a teenager, no, you don't exist, to becoming a Christian. Okay, so you exist. Now what? To, you mean I have to be a certain way? Okay, I think I can do that. To, well, that didn't work for me, but you're still here. Interesting. To ultimately, God being my friend, confidant, and encourager, with a lot of why and how in between. But why? I know that I am never alone because God is with me. I know I am loved because Jesus died for me. These two things are constant, but my perception of them sometimes isn't. Sometimes I know in my head, but I don't feel in my heart, which is why I need constant reminding. So another little story, which brings up our other Bible verse for today. When I was 17, in the it's not a phase, Mom, phase, not believing in much and just hoping to get to 18, a fellow student, a boy in my class, dropped a Bible verse in our Year 12 envelope, so it's kind of like a yearbook. And it was 2 Samuel 22, verses 2 to 4, where David is speaking, like he's just undergone this huge change. He's been fighting his enemies, he's had Saul on his back, and the Lord has been with him that entire time. David spoke to the Lord the words of this song on the day when the Lord delivered him from the hand of his enemies. He said, "The Lord is my rock, my fortress and my deliverer, my God, my rock in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold, my refuge, my saviour, you save me from violence. I call upon the Lord who is worthy to be praised, and I am saved from my enemies." At the time, I was much confused at this affronting verse as a self-declared atheist, and I asked him why he did it. Why did you do that? Why did you put that in my yearbook? And he said, "I would understand in the fullness of time." And I'm like, infuriating. And yet, a year later, I was a Christian, still flawed and still very immature, but I finally understood. God was there. Even if I wasn't having a bar of it, he was still there. I have other experiences that have shown that God is with me, which I might share another time, but the other biggest thing that holds me steady in times of change is the love and support of others. God has shown up in the people around me, whether they know it or not. I've been prayed for, crocheted for, fed, watered, housed, and encouraged by people who know Jesus and by people who don't. But to me, their kindness is a reflection of God's image in them. I just have to remember that it's there, just like God is. Weirdly enough, though, human brains don't like to remember or recall the good as a default position. I think I'm missing a slide here. So, there was my slide there. What little things make you feel good amidst the bigness of change? We can go back a bit. One thing you do, it might again be chocolate. It might be a hug. It might be reaching out or calling a friend. It might be praying to God, talking to God. Being in nature, having a sleep in. Oh, God, thank you for sleep-ins. Hugging a pet. Taking some time out. So some people love to be with other people. Ooh. I love you all. Thank you. Thanks, Grace. Yeah, love you too. But sometimes it's just good to have some time to yourself. And for other people, they hate that. And it's about seeking people out. So I'm going to have a little look at these. Animals, journaling, having a nap, yeah. Reminding things that are unchanging, great. I think it's good to also know that other people have similar strategies. Like we've all dealt with change in some level, but there are different things out there that suit different people. So yeah, here we go. What is the best thing that you think might help you to remember that you are loved by God or by others? For me, it's taking that moment and recognizing that God's still there between the moment of breathing in and breathing out. So, prayer, absolutely. Praying, worship. Thank you to our worship team. Nature. I think nature's a really big one. So I'm going away for 2 weeks, and I'm going to just be in nature, and it's going to be glorious. No, I'm not running off into the wilderness forever, just for 2 weeks, and in a camper van. Worship, love, church. All of these things speak to me of some kind of connection, whether it's with people or whether it's with God's creation. The interesting thing is, though, is that we have this thing called negative bias. We aren't wired to remember or recall these wonderful things as often as we would probably like. It's something about survival in the jungle, which Anyone here surviving in like a jungle that needs negative? Okay, just a little bit over there, Sam. Okay, great. Thanks for your honesty. I remember reading a study that to feel like we are neutral in the ratio of negative to positive statements was a 1:3. So for every one negative piece of feedback that your brain perceived, whether it was true or not, you needed 3 things your brain knew were positive, which that's a lot. But to feel like we're making positive growth, it's 1:4. To feel like we're thriving, it's 1:6. That's a lot. Now, however, I am a math enthusiast. If you also know me, that's another one of my teaching areas. I like to think of God as infinite, yeah? And he is love and therefore good. So he sits in the positive column, yeah? Yeah, great. So technically, the real ratio is finite negatives because I have to stop counting at some time. So let's put x as the number, x to infinite. There's going to be a time where God's infinite goodness is going to outweigh my finite negatives in my life. I just have to remember them. I have to recall them. I have to make that little movement or shift to shine a light on the beautiful things and the beautiful people that are in my life that remind me that I am loved. If you're not sure in our little word cloud of what things that remind you that you are loved by others and by God, that is okay too. I don't know is an acceptable answer. So, we're coming to the close here. To summarize, I love a good summary. Hopefully you've learned the following. To sum up, change is inevitable. It's going to be here whether we like it or not. Dealing with change well, so is, from my opinion, again, this is my opinion. This is not a theological pouring out of God said this unto Josie and Josie now shouts it from a pulpit. It's just Josie sharing her thoughts. Making intrinsic attitude changes to help you find what you can control. So knowing that you can do something and then doing those small actions to help you with the bigger changes. It's like little change to help with big change, which is kind of cool in a way. But the biggest thing I think for me was dealing with change well is remembering that God is with you and so are other people. So may we remember this week that we are not alone. We have each other and God has us. Thank you for listening.